Okay, so the first tree is finished, okay, and you can see how I added all the little bromeliads, and then every time I anchor a bromeliad to one of these vines, I put some hot glue and then push in some of this craft moss. And this is the stuff you get in floral shops. You get this at Walmart. This is key because you want to kind of stick it in there so that it forms even more of an anchor point. And hot glue loves this stuff. It will cement right through it, and you just pluck out any extra filaments. The other thing is, remember that when I make the bromeliads, I take the plants off, and there's a hole in there, and so I put wire, floral wire, through that hole, and I make the anchor, and that's what I use to twirl around the vines so that that is really secure. And then of course hot glue. Now the base of the tree is also decorated. You can see I added homemade flock, and this is colored sawdust that I make at home. And I make it in many different colors and many different grades. This is my coarser grade, and I add some pieces of moss. And you can see when you dry brush, you can see the hot glue, like the hot glue shapes that you make, and it adds a lot to it. And so these are all the plastic plants, and notice how I squeeze that moss into the base of those plants there, right? So one thing to keep in mind is that hot glue gets very hot, and not only you don't want to get burned, but hot glue will melt these aquarium decorations. So you have to be very careful when you apply your hot glue. So this tree is done, and I'm working on the second tree, and you can see I already have the flock, and I use tacky glue for my flock. This stuff is great. It's very pasty, but it's very, very strong. And it glues that flock on there quite nicely. All right, so I'm already beginning to work on this tree, and I'm going to add all the decorations to the vine, and then these trees will be finished, and I'm going to set them up for you guys so you have an idea of what the table will look like. I just want to show you this tree. These are older trees, actually. I didn't mention that in the video, but these are older trees, and I did a slightly different technique for these trees. The vines are actually in the tinfoil, you know, and then I coat them with a very thin coat of tinfoil so you can still see them. But I added another kind of vine, basically using twine. You can kind of vary the vines on the trees, and that makes it look a lot interesting. A lot of vines are actually tan or brown. They're not really green. They're not always green. And then of course I decorated the base. Okay, and so I added this vine, and then at the tip, since it doesn't have any canopy, you add your nice moss there. And here is the brown tree. Now for the brown tree, I actually added an extra branch, okay, and then added my bromeliads, right? Added those, I cut those little plastic plants and glue them on, and then add, they do have wire, and then add, you know, my craft moss. And for this one, I actually painted the vine with a little short burst of spray paint. Left it beige and green. So this is the other tree, and I think it has a lot more character, and you kind of, you know, you attach your vines all around, and I can actually add more vines. You can go to town on this. If you want to add more vegetation to the trunks, you can go to town, because in a jungle, in a rainforest, the trees are literally hosts for a ton of different epiphytic vegetation. So, and the last thing I want to show you guys is how I make these sort of grassy plants. I use these for a variety of things. We will have another video where we talk specifically about this. But I use this right here, and you can see one right there, and I'm going to add this one there. And this is done with twine, right? And this is sort of a brittle twine. You want to make sure that it's brittle. They sell a softer kind that's no good. But I basically cut this into clumps of a little over an inch, and I use my comb to kind of spread them out. And then before I glued them together, I actually wrap wire, about an inch wire to the base, and then I put my hot glue. And then I separated my hands, right? And you get this nice bushy thing. And then you either leave it brown, if you want brown grass, or you give it a little spray paint. And this makes excellent grass. I cut it in all kinds of sizes for different projects. So when we talk about grasses, you know, we'll mention what these could be useful for. All right, folks, so I'm going to finish up. These jungle trees are just about finished, and then we can move on this week of tree terrain, and we still have to talk about hills. All right, let me show you real quick how I wrap this epiphyte around the vine here. And these vines have wire in them, so they're sturdy. I'm going to take one of these sturdier parts of the vine, and I take my anchor wire and really wrap it around. And then I'm going to use craft moss. Here's my little clump of craft moss that I cut. I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue on there. And I'm going to hot glue all those wires, including the plant. And quickly attach my craft moss. All right, and I didn't quite use enough. I'm going to attach my craft moss there and press it in. Okay. And later I'm going to take out whatever's loose. Okay, and let's see if I can focus this. Okay, so you can see it there. That's the idea. And I'm going to work around the other side as well, and kind of press this down a little bit and get anything loose out. And there is my little epiphyte attached to the vine.